Nuance with Nikki, the nitty gritty, even if it's shitty. Over here we have adult conversations. Over here I swear like a sailor and smoke like a chimney, and I'm not comfortable for sensitive audiences, especially the kids, to be watching this, okay? I speak from the heart and meh. Okay, me and all my 15 personalities. So welcome to new members, new people in the audience. I can see that I'm getting a whole lot of new people on my channel, which does then mean, and I must apologize to my old people, that I have to replay a lot of footage and restate the obvious, or at least what is obvious from a South African perspective, which might not be intuitive to you. Guys, the Oval Office should never be used as Elon Musk's personal fleshlight. No matter how much you hear me on this channel potentially criticizing Americans or criticizing the Brits or criticizing those people, it does not mean whoever's country I criticize. I normally criticize people that I think of as bullies or whatever, but it does not mean that I think that those people should be tossed and turned at the masturbatory whims of a people from Pretoria. Okay, I hope that you guys understand when I'm having a nuanced conversation. If I criticize a country, it's usually either the people in charge or it is the worst versions of them. It's not obviously every single individual. The United States and Britain, I can also say, have enough people that are dissenting voices to the bullshit in their own country. Okay, so, no. The United States should not be Elon Musk's personal fleshlight, and that is my position. So they showed you many images in that White House. So I'd like to give you some more context and show you images that they may never show you. And this is Garfield. Garfield, say hi. Okay, Garfield says hi in cat language. Cool. Don't show them your butt, Garfield. That's how cats say I love you, okay? So he's being nice. He's being nice. I wish I had my glasses. All right. Anyway, so you had obviously President Cyril Ramaphosa on the left there. You had President Donald Trump. You must have seen the meeting by now. Social media is ablaze. They obviously showed you videos of this man, Jacob Zuma. He was singing the Kill the Buddha song, right? And they showed you Julius Malema. So I'm going to call these guys Bromeo and Julius, okay? Because these two guys used to be buddies, okay? You might wonder why many South Africans aren't concerned about him singing Kill the Buddha. Well, the thing is, we're not sure, most South Africans, if he knows what death means. Because once upon a time, he said, I would die for Jacob Zuma, right? And then he left Jacob Zuma's party, and then they became big enemies. It was a whole comedy. Okay, and the other guy over here was Jacob Zuma. So let's talk about him first, right? He was the first one that you saw there singing that song. This guy, which you may not know, Jacob Zuma, used to be the president of South Africa. He wasn't even voted in. His party was voted in, and then he got the actual president fired and told us as the rest of the country, fuck you guys, you don't vote for the president, you vote for the party, so I'm president now. And we're like, wait, what? Cool. Then other people voted for him, I guess. But, so he was the president. So the question that I hope, the obvious question that I hope is occurring to you now, if he wanted to commit a white G-side, why didn't he do it when he was president of the country? Why didn't he do it when he had the National South African Defence Force, the SANDF, South African National Defence Force, at his disposal as a president would? When he had all the police at his disposal as the president would? Okay? Because most of it is a farce, guys. Stick with me. You're new to this information. You're new to the South African conversation, and I've been South African my whole life. So if something doesn't make sense, give me a chance. I've got years to catch you up on. And many of you have learned some basic rudimentary South African history, but you learn it not from South African mouths. Okay? So that is one of the first questions you should be asking yourself, I hope. Okay? And then we've got Julius Malema. So they'll show you pictures and they'll show you symbols of him singing that song, right? What they will fail to show you, for example, is counter videos, which represent many more people in South Africa, such as this, right? Let's go.
Text, people chanting, kill the bull, kill the farmer, as free speech. That is insane. That is insane. And me, I have always been on the side of the people that are saying, kill the Boer, kill the farmer, it is hate speech. And if you say that kill the Boer, kill the farmer, it is not hate speech, how would you feel if the Afrikaners would go out and chant, kill black people, kill the darkies? Because I can tell you now, for free, that the people that are defending kill the Boer, kill the farmer, they will totally lose their mind when the Afrikaners would go out and chant, kill black people, kill the darkies. They would say that these people are, man, we need to condemn these people for what they are doing. How can these Afrikaners go out in their groups to chant, kill black people, kill the darkies? This is unacceptable. But somehow it is acceptable for black people in this country to chant, kill the Boer, kill the farmer. So it shows you that it is hate speech. It is hate speech. And maybe this is the reason why Ramaphosa did not look Donald Trump in the eye and say that this is protected under free speech by the Constitutional Court. I remember one of the journalists in the White House, he questioned Ramaphosa about
So the point that I'm trying to make there is they're not going to show you on international TV images of the fact that there are people, he says, I've always been one of those people that have said it is hate speech. Okay, all South Africans are painted with the same brush. We are not judged. We're judged by our extremists. We're not judged by just the general consensus in South Africa. Oh no. You guys aren't judged just by the KKK. Okay, all of Britain isn't just judged by the royal family's history or whatever the case is. Do you know what I mean? So I'm just saying, like, guys, come on. Okay. Going back to President Jacob Zuma over here, I told you that he was president. What I haven't told you is that he was fired. By whom? By the whole of South Africa. The whole of South Africa. So please watch protests that happened, not just because the kill the Boer, kill the farmer may seem like a big thing to you, but you don't understand how many other things we had to protest when it came to this guy. You have no clue. So please watch our response to his presidency.
On the streets calling for a better South Africa. The message clear.
Power to the people, power!
No to corruption and calls for change in leadership.
When the middle class comes to the street, then we know there is a political and economic crisis.
We must push our demand for a harmonious nation, for a corruption-free nation, for a nation that controls its own resources.
On the steps of the seat of power, others marched peacefully with police keeping a close watch. Many still expressed anger at the firing of Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene, which cost the country billions. In Cape Town, protesters began gathering in front of Parliament's gates, many here hoping their voices will lead to change.
It's not enough to sit back and say somebody else will do it, it's somebody else's problem. It's our problem. South Africa must rise.
Then with enough numbers in attendance, they made their way to the company gardens adjacent to Parliament.
We who are people of faith are audacious. Who is Jacob Zuma?
We came out in our numbers. I actually had left the country at the point that they impeached this president, right? And I came back in part because the guy that amongst other things was singing Kill the Buddha, but amongst plenty of other stuff, okay? That we're not going down that rabbit hole, but I then felt safer to come back to my country because he was out of power. Okay? This president over here and this president over here, Donald Trump, within 1 week cost me more money than I have the story to tell you right now in 1 week in November 2016. Okay? It was another story, okay? This guy over here, Julius Malema, okay, who used to be in a bromance with Jacob Zuma, and then long before all of this, they broke sides. Like President Ramaphosa was trying to tell you, we have many parties in South Africa. We have 400 seats in government. Okay, so we have 400 seats in government. We've got the ANC. That is President Cyril Ramaphosa that you saw over there, right? These are his guys. They own 159 seats. Okay, then you've got the DA. There was another guy sitting in the White House as well, the Minister of Agriculture over here, John Steenhuisen. He was sitting there. He is part of this party called the DA. They hold 87 seats. Okay, then you've got the Inkatha Freedom Party, who we're going to talk about in a minute. They own 17 seats. You've got the Patriotic Alliance. We'll talk about them potentially. Freedom Front, etc., etc. But that is how our government looks, okay, in terms of their seats. And so MK and the EFF are represented by these two guys that were in that video. All right? But I find it so ironic that the president that had to sit there next to President Trump, President Cyril Ramaphosa, I find it so ironic that he's the one who has to answer for this guy's words. Why? Because President Cyril Ramaphosa is the president that replaced Jacob Zuma when we fired Jacob Zuma as a country with one voice. The hashtag was called hashtag Zuma must fall. Okay, this is very rudimentary modern South African history. Okay, but we demanded that he resigned. We fired him. Okay, and so the guy who actually replaced him came with this guy, okay, are the ones that have to answer when they're actually competition. Make it make sense, please. Make it make sense. And Elon Musk is obviously aware of all of this, right? One more thing. When we talk about President Jacob Zuma, the guy that was singing that, the guy that we fired, okay, remember I mentioned the Minister of Agriculture? Here, John Steenhuisen. Here is the former president of his party speaking out against Jacob Zuma. And here is when his party actually walked out of parliament when Jacob Zuma was president. So there are all the seats that I spoke about earlier. And his party walked right out. And to get some idea of what they were saying, let's listen to what president at the time, president of the DA, the Democratic Alliance, was saying.
And have it debated today, because we believe in the rule of law and we will do what is right by that law. And of course,
they're not going to show you those images, right? They're not going to show you the images of a black man saying stuff like that. Oh no, they're just going to show the stuff that presents as worse in the Oval Office with all the theatrics. Why can one YouTuber find this stuff and you can't?
because we believe in the rule of law and we will do what is right by that law. And of course,
okay, so that's just a little bit of the background that I wanted to give you. So why do I make the bold statement that Elon Musk is using the Oval Office as his personal fleshlight? He knows all of these things. He knows all of these things. Remember that other guy, Julius Malema? Okay, the guy that you guys said, oh, he had a whole stadium filled. Here's how other parties speak about him. This is the Inkatha Freedom Party. In case you're wondering what race the Inkatha Freedom Party is likely to be, in case the name doesn't give it away, but in case you were wondering about the Inkatha Freedom Party, there they are. Okay? I think that image speaks for itself. When they were speaking about Julius Malema, they actually threw him shade. They said, over the past few hours, we have been inundated with media inquiries to react to utterances by EFF leader Julius Malema, okay, because he was giving them crap, and this is how they refer to him. Over the past few hours, we've been inundated with media inquiries to react to utterances by EFF leader Julius Malema at a rent-a-crowd event in Pietermaritzburg this weekend. Why would they refer to it as a rent-a-crowd event? Because it is known in South Africa that Julius Malema pays very poor people to go to his rallies and sing that stuff, okay? He'll pay them, it is rumored that he'll pay them 200 Rand a person, which amounts to $10 per person. Okay, but there are people poor enough to be desperate to do that. It is also rumored that many of those people aren't even South African citizens and are doing it in the hopes of getting IDs. Okay, how true all of that is, you can go do your own research. I'm just telling you what the general South African population around me says. Okay, so they're saying at a rent-a-crowd event held in Pietermaritzburg this weekend, and all they said was, as a general rule, okay, excuse for my pronunciation for this, asiupenduli umasango, which basically translates to, we don't answer crazy people. They basically called him cray cray in a very classy way, and they still keep it here. I'll put a link in the description if I recall. It's literally on their thing. They didn't even think he was worth speaking to. It was very classy.
The people that are defending kill the boer, kill the farmer, they will totally lose their mind when the Afrikaners would go out and chant, kill black people, kill the darkies. They would say that these people are, man, we need to condemn these people for what they are doing. How can these Afrikaners go out in their groups to chant, kill black people, kill the darkies? This is unacceptable. So it shows you that it is hate speech.
360 experience. He's got nearly 60,000 followers. Okay, and he's consistently talking about South African politics. Now let's go back to the Pupil from Pretoria, the owner of Starlink, using the Oval Office as his own personal way of masturbating. He tried to come to South Africa. South African law says, please, can you make sure that when you come to South Africa, at least 30% of the people that you hire or work with, 30%. Remember, our population is 80% black. They said to him, can at least 30% of those people be black according to our laws? Okay, because that falls under something called black economic empowerment. And that is what many of these people that are calling themselves refugees are against. They're against black economic empowerment. Because even though he wouldn't word like this, Elon Musk, and I'm speaking now as a South African, as Elon Musk's fellow South African, believes in something which was never called this, but which myself and Dan Corder over here, a brilliant talk show host over here, calls white economic empowerment. And I would encourage you to listen to what he's saying. This is the history of our country that we still live in.
Now, obviously, this is actually a very serious moment. We are about to face a week of absolute nonsense from Trump's MAGA America about how these Americana refugees are in so much trouble, and of course, massive backlash from Americans asking how some white people got refugee status in America, but not many millions of black and brown actual refugees from around the world. But these lying, deluded Amerikaners are not the only South Africans who are currently talking a lot about race and transformation. The DA took the government to court over the amendments to the Employment Equity Act last week, which they say are unconstitutional because it enables discrimination against certain races. Last week, the DA's Sith Lord, Helen Ziller, also said that jobs should be awarded based on merit, not race. Political parties are proposing alternatives to black economic empowerment, BEE policy, and the fight over what is transformation to redress past injustices and what is unfair discrimination now is getting...
What this should tell you is that South Africans are handling their South African business. We are having these discussions, and many times Americans and many times other Westerners will talk to us and go, why don't you do ABC, when we're already doing it? Okay, please put the American protagonist's energy aside. Please put the American notions of moral superiority aside, the Western notions of moral superiority aside. We are South Africaning over here. We are handling our South African business, but we're doing it through a democratic process. Okay, and we deserve the dignity of our process just as much as any nation. I would remind you that we are younger than all of your nations. We're a baby democracy. My country is younger than me. It was born when I was 8 years old. Okay? I was born before my 9th birthday. We're doing everything we can, and we're doing it better than many of you would care to admit.
Louder and louder. And it's getting to the point where, I don't know about you, but I'm starting to feel like we're losing our grip on reality a little bit. Honestly, I know a lot of people don't take history to matric. I know a lot of people were in high school under apartheid. I know a lot of people don't want anyone to know what really happened before 1994. But we cannot seriously be getting to the point where white people are feeling like they're genuinely being oppressed, forced out of jobs and wealth, and being driven down by government policy. So now we're going to get a grip, and we're going to have a reality check. We're going to talk about white economic empowerment. Because although it wasn't officially called that, like BEE, that's what apartheid was. and colonialism before that. It was a system built to advantage white people and exploit black people. It was designed to create wealth for white people and keep black people from gaining wealth. It was a system that transferred what little money black people earned into the hands of white people.
Now listen closely, because many of you think you know how to tell apartheid history, okay? But I would encourage you strongly, when listening to perspectives on apartheid, on South Africa, on anything, listen to South African voices such as Dan Corder's, such as my own, and such as South Africans of all walks of life, okay? And put them over your own perspectives and information from your own sources, because we have the last word on how South Africa is defined, and we have all of the information and the lived experiences, and I shouldn't even have to be defending this, but sometimes I have to say that. I have to warn you guys against your own Afrophobia that you don't even mean to, or even know you have. Don't put me in an impossible position. Sit in the audience and listen.
And it was incredibly successful. And it went so much further than any current government policies do, no matter what the right-wing politicians are saying to you. It created the most unequal society on earth, where the vast majority of white people remain blessed beyond the wildest dreams of the majority of black South Africans. So tonight, if you'll forgive me, we're going to remind, or maybe teach many South Africans for the first time, what really happened during apartheid and before. Now, we could start basically any time from the moment Jan van Riebeeck arrived in 1652, and the hundreds of years of colonialism full of violence, dispossession, and exploitation. But for the purposes of properly understanding modern South Africa, we're going to look at government policies and programs from the moment South Africa as a country came into existence, so we can compare laws and programs through time and how they affected everyone in what is...
People claim that there are laws of this and this and that in South Africa, but they aren't doing what Dan Corder's doing. Actually show the laws. Be it enacted in the Queen's most excellent majesty, the Senate and the House of Assembly in the Union of South Africa as follows. Racial law after racial law, economic law after economic law. There's the receipts. There's the receipts. Show us receipts when you're claiming we have laws.
It's now a truly democratic South Africa. Let's start in 1910. It's just 15 years ago, when the Union of South Africa was formed. Literally, the country was invented, it came into existence for the first time, and government policy affected everybody in the whole country for the first time. The Second South African War, also known as the Anglo-Boer War, had just ended. It was a war between the British and the Boers, and the British won. Now, the British wanted to unite all white people together with them to rule a brand new country. They couldn't do it on their own. They needed all of the whites, especially the Afrikaners, who they had been fighting in and killing for years. In fact, don't know if you know this, but some of the first concentration camps in the whole world were in the Free State now. It was British holding Afrikaners and others in captivity. So the first thing the British did was they ruled that only white people could vote in this new country. Instantly unite all the white people, only they could vote, only they could have a say in the making of a new country. Just 3 years later, in 1913...
What Dan doesn't say is that they also imported more white people. They paid them to come over. Such as my dad. Such as my physio's mom, who tried to take her friend to coffee one day, and the friend goes, I can't go with you to that, she's like, hey, you're a great person, can you come for coffee? No, I can't go to that coffee shop. And she's like, why? And the lady goes, because I'm colored. And and Evo's mom's like, so? Which shows you that they didn't always clearly tell the immigrants to this country what they were bringing them here for. My father was supposed to increase the white population. So much for that.
They made it illegal, impossible for black people to own land outside of very small reserves. That meant that instantly 93% of all land in South Africa could only be owned by white people. Just 21% of the population at the time. Millions of black South Africans across the country were forced off their land. People of color were forced out of their homes for the next 70 years, from 1913 through the forced removals of communities like District 6 and Sophiatown. To go back, then in the early 1920s, poor white Afrikaners protested that most big industries were dominated by British companies. And those companies were hiring skilled black workers over poor, unskilled Afrikaners. So in response, the government funded enormous public works projects like building the Hartbeespoort Dam, and they only hired poor white workers. Then in 1925, the Wage Act made a minimum wage, but for only white workers, not black workers, meaning that black workers could still be radically exploited. And the government also created incentives for companies applying for tenders. The more white workers you employ, the more likely you were to get the tender. So all this was already happening before apartheid even started. And then in 1948, the National Party took power and formalized apartheid for the very first time. Immediately, they began directing massive tax funding to social programs and welfare grants for poor white people, and they slashed funding for similar programs that were meant for black people. The NPO worked for decades to lift white people out of poverty, to get them good educations and good jobs. They provided electricity and plumbing and water and healthcare to white people while doing nothing of the sort for black South Africans. And the NPO worked incredibly hard to promote white...
And then today they'll call it a merit society, but a lot of that merit is based on the fact that you can speak English and Afrikaans, which puts people at a disadvantage who may speak Xhosa, Zulu, Sotho, Tswana, Pedi, Venda, etc., etc., etc. Tsonga. Okay? Now, based on what I called those languages, what race do you think those people are likely to be?
Specifically Afrikaner-owned businesses by providing government funding, tenders, incentives, and other opportunities to such companies. Many of South Africa's biggest, most famous companies today that you all know so well were created and grown by the apartheid government's support. That's how they got big. Also, during apartheid in 1950, the Group Areas Act stopped black people from moving through South Africa freely. They had to get permission to go places, always on white people's terms. And this obviously made it incredibly hard to find work, or live near places of work, or access basic services like electricity, plumbing, waste removal, health.
And you know how it started? It started because for that election that put apartheid into place, they won't tell you. It started because very few people...
Gaza is now a graveyard for children, a cemetery.
It started because very few people showed up at the election polls and very few people voted. Very few people voted. Just didn't show up to an election. And so here is the architect of apartheid defining what it is. Okay, he's going to explain it, and it started so politely and so nicely and so insidiously. And, yeah.
Our policy is one which is called by an Afrikaans word apartheid. And I'm afraid that has been misunderstood so often. It could just as easily, and perhaps much better, be described as a policy of good neighborliness, accepting that there are differences between people. But while these differences exist, and you have to acknowledge them, at the same time, you can live together, aid one another, but that it can best be done when you act as good neighbors always do.
This is my last...
Sorry, maybe I shouldn't have taken it away. That was the last apartheid president speaking there. Maybe I should.
Last message addressed to the people of South Africa. To my dear wife and family, I will say goodbye in a different way. Our country faces so many challenges of a serious nature. I hold firm opinions about all of them, but decided to keep this message very short and only really focus on two issues: touching me and touching the country. Before I do so, I would like to thank all my friends and supporters for the wonderful support and encouragement they gave me throughout my life and throughout my political career. Many of them were close to me, even for decades. Others intervened occasionally. I thank you for your support and your trust in me. I thank you for your friendship. Thank you for having carried me on your shoulders for so many years. The first issue I want to focus on is apartheid and me. I'm still often accused by critics that I in some way or another continue to justify apartheid or separate development, as we later prefer to call it. It is true that in my younger years, I defended separate development, as I never liked the word apartheid. I did so when I was a member of parliament, and I did so as I became a member of cabinet. Afterwards, on many occasions, I apologized for the pain and the indignity that apartheid has brought to persons of color in South Africa. Many believed me, but others didn't. Therefore, let me today, in this last message, repeat, I, without qualification, apologize for the pain and the hurt and the indignity and the damage that apartheid has done to black, brown, and Indians in South Africa. I do so not only in my capacity as the former leader of the National Party, but also as an individual. Allow me in this last message to share with you the fact that since the early 80s, my views changed completely. It was as if I had...
So being the last president of apartheid and also the guy who worked with Nelson Mandela to end apartheid, and they won a Nobel Peace Prize together. He's quite a controversial figure, but I thought that it'd be interesting to know him. Anyway, we're talking about the economic side of it, not the violent side of it, which is a whole nother dark rabbit hole.
Healthcare and more. This was just 80 years ago, guys. From 1953, the Bantu Education Act literally made it the law that black people could only be taught to do basic unskilled labor, to be laborers on mines or on construction sites, or to be maids in white people's houses. They were limited by that education system to only have a skill set to do menial service labor for white South Africans. Also in the 1950s and in the 1960s, the apartheid government froze black people's pensions in place, which meant that as inflation increased, the value of black people's pensions shrank. Now, all I've just said, and there was so much of it, is only a handful of the many things the apartheid government did to engineer white South African prosperity and keep black South Africans poor, uneducated, and easy to exploit. All of this economic engineering created modern democratic South Africa. And I actually don't think many of us truly understand how well white economic empowerment worked. Just after the end of apartheid in 1996, the first official census of black South Africa took place. This was 29 years ago, acknowledging and properly accounting for the lived experiences of black South Africans for the first time.
We can go on and on, but this was racism on an economic level, on a geographic level. Our streets were designed by psychologists. You can actually see the difference between a pre-apartheid town and an apartheid level town. A township, a colored township such as Westbury that was built in apartheid will have a lot of cul-de-sacs, whereas across the road you have Coronationville pre-apartheid, which actually has grid lines. The cul-de-sacs so that the police could catch you. The grid lines, are just... It was planned differently. All kinds of things were planned, to make sure that a certain population would have a higher level of alcoholism and so on and so forth, right? In terms of how the laws were structured so that, in one town, you can't have a liquor store this close to a school or a church. In another town, you can. Psychologists sat and studied how you can create the most unequal country in the world. Okay?
In history, this was 29 years ago. It found out that 20%, 1 in 5 black South African households was informal housing, like shacks in people's backyards or on open land. That's around 6 million black South Africans living in shackland dwellings. You know how many white South Africans lived in informal housing in 1996? 4,000, relative to 6 million. In 1996, more than 7 million black South Africans had no access to piped water. Just 130,000 white South Africans didn't have piped water. And in 1996, more than 17 million black South Africans didn't have electricity. Just 17,000 white South Africans didn't have electricity. This was now, people, I was alive when this was the case. Now, don't shame me, I'm only 31, but I was alive when this was the case. And now we're in 2025. Many things have improved since 1996 for many black South Africans. But due to recent decades of ANC government incompetence and criminal corruption, there's a whole lot of work that has not yet been done. But to be honest, even a perfect government would have taken far longer than 30 years to undo the damage that the Union and apartheid governments did. And none of our modern policies violate people's rights the way the Land Act, or the Group Areas Act, or the Bantu Education Act, or all those economic policies did. All white South Africans benefited from 84 years of those evil laws and were blessed by those white economic empowerment programs. That's why the vast...
All. That includes Elon Musk. He benefited from this. And he was, even in that top group, he's at the top. He still would make them look poor. That's how deeply he benefited. This is how he thinks. He left South Africa in a world that looks like this, a Disneyland for white people. And now he's using the Oval Office as his personal fleshlight.
The vast majority of white South Africans are still the wealthiest, and the vast majority of black South Africans are still the poorest. Sure, modern transformation policies do try to give opportunities to people of color and women and disabled people to try and redress centuries of unfair, unjust policies. And you know what? Even with those policies, the vast majority of white South Africans are still wealthier than the vast majority of black South Africans could ever dream of being in their lifetimes, because transformation policies now don't violate people's rights, and that means that they take much longer. This last weekend, a report found that black South Africans accounted for 15% of skilled jobs in 1994, and in 2014, only 18%. In 20 years of freedom, only 3% more skilled jobs were going to black South Africans. And in corporate South Africa, white South Africans hold 62% of the management roles, despite white, 62%.
If you were born in a free country, please grasp this. The oldest South Africans born free, just like you, only turned 31 this year. They only turned 31 this year. Okay? They only most likely finished university during COVID. So if they happen to be playing black tax in this country, which I have tried to demonstrate through Dan's work here, is quite extensive, then when you and the rest of the world look down on the accomplishments they have achieved in spite of that, I trust you'll remember that context, if you even understood what I said there.
Karens, guys. Despite white people only being 7.7% of the working age population, black South Africans only hold 17% of the management roles in this country, and that's with transformation policies. That's with BEE incentives. Imagine if those policies hadn't existed, how little change would have happened in the last 30 years or so. Now, we all know the Afrikaner refugees are absurd. We all know that. But for Helen Ziller and the likes to be saying we need to give jobs based on merit, not race, is ridiculous. Firstly, with transformation policies, you still have to be qualified to do the job before your race, gender, and physical status is considered. The policies don't give people jobs who aren't qualified to do them just because they're black or a woman or disabled. But secondly, many black South Africans were raised during apartheid, denied all those opportunities, services, and quality of life that white South Africans were given. They deserve to have what they have overcome recognized. They deserve a fair shot and a level playing field. And so do their children. Many young black South Africans seeking work now grew up in poor homes just after apartheid, without opportunities or services.
And they are some of the most hardworking, determined people in the world. Hardworking, determined, will show up.
Or family wealth. Many young black South Africans were the first in their families to go to university. They deserve a fair shot at employment, even when competing with white South Africans who did get all those advantages, all the extra blessings, all the family wealth, and all the personal networks through which many people get jobs. So let's get a grip, shall we? We are trying to make South Africa a fairer, more inclusive, just place. We are trying to transform it from the unjust, unequal hellscape for many that it was just 31 years ago. And all of this frenzied whining about how hard the government is apparently making life for white South Africans, that ignores reality, it ignores history, and it divides us.
It also is an easy narrative to swallow and to articulate, but all of this takes time, actually looking at reality and actually looking at facts and doing the adult work.
It divides us. And I think we need to make a concerted effort as South African society to tell these idiots to just shut up or catch a flight to America, because they can do that now. Because let's be honest, when all those Americans got on that flight this morning, you know what we all said? It's like dub on SABC2, bye-bye, 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 tot ziens. That might not get on TV.
Okay, if you don't know what that reference is to, Dub, it's a thing that we grew up with, as kids. Dub would always just say bye-bye when he was done.
Bye. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye. Bye-bye.
So our issue as South Africans is not that these 49 have left. I feel nothing about that situation other than, shame, sorry, America, that they're your problem now. Like, you please keep them, because many of them are asking. I watched the lawyers who were coaching them on how to handle the immigration process, and they said, can I go back home for my birthday? Okay? But for those who want to continue the adult conversation, realizing that what South African law is doing, and I've tried to illustrate that this man, Cyril Ramaphosa, is not the same as Jacob Zuma, and he's not the same as Julius Malema, and they're not, like, there are so many different parties. I can criticize them all, I can say good things about them all, whether or not, like, you guys know one layer of the onion, okay? But here's the other layer. Dan Corder, a white South African, spoke about white economic empowerment. Let's listen to the heart of black economic empowerment, and actually also hear what black South Africans have to say.
This is what baffles me by those who are opposed to black economic empowerment. I say, what do you want to see happening? Do you want to see black people continuing to play the role of laborers, drawers of water, hewers of wood, and consumers only? Why can't black people be made to own productive aspects of life? Why can't they be rich as well? That is what needs to happen.
We are an extraordinarily rich country. We own 90% of the world's platinum, 50% of the world's gold. I can't even list or name the other minerals that we own. Honestly, the only thing we're poor in is water. But if it's a metal, we've got it.
Because it is when they get to that level. Dr. Mulder, you look at the Afrikaners, the history of your people. If you look at the history of your people, they were held back by the English. And with later days, they were enabled. They became more and more.
Another nuance here, I've asked multiple times on this channel, just because there are these 49 Afrikaners doesn't mean that I'm asking you to treat any Afrikaners in America poorly. Okay, there are 80,000 South Africans living as American citizens now. Many of those will be white, many of the white ones will be Afrikaans. Please do not treat them badly. Treat them according to their own character and according to how you know them. And if you don't know them, please give them a chance, because they are not these people. And just like every American doesn't deserve to be judged by the KKK or whatever, they don't deserve to be judged by that narrative. We also acknowledge the deep distress that England caused them. And if you don't know that, come and ask us as South Africans, okay? But there's an extent to which the Anglophone world represents all of England, and that includes America, okay? So this whole thing is bizarre. It's bizarre. But if you hear nothing else, hear that I'm asking for kindness for individuals based on who they are, please. Don't now go drink the Kool-Aid and treat them shittily, because frankly, I'm telling you, that's Afrophobia. That's Afrophobia. Whether or not they fit your definition of what an African is, that's because your definition is flawed. Your definition limits Africa, the most diverse continent, to one race. It limits Africa, the fastest developing continent, to one socioeconomic circle. Your definition's off. Okay, I'm telling you from South Africa. Anyway, carrying on.
More economically empowered. And they became economically empowered due to the policies of apartheid, the laws that were put in place, the sweet deals that they were given, and they started getting more and more into being serious economic players. Why can't the same be done for black people? Why? And this baffles me. Really, I don't understand it, because to me that is the normal thing to do. You need...
The same thing is going to be done, but it won't be done in the same way. It's going to be done in an equitable way, because black South Africans have already proven that. They brought forth the first revolution in history without a war. And that needs to be remembered and acknowledged, okay? Every other human being in history who ever had a revolution responded in violence. This is the one group of people that responded with negotiations and with talks. And with trying to level the playing field, not reverse the dichotomy. Okay? Black people in South Africa are not trying to do this. They're trying to do that. And the frenzy that other people have about them, whether they're South African or not, speaks more about those people than it does about black South Africans. You are projecting what you would do in their shoes. And that pisses me off. It pisses me off when any South African is treated like that. Any South African. Like, I've heard people say, oh, you guys only call yourself colored because you want to be whatever like whites. And it's like, you are projecting what you would do if you were mixed race. That's not my story, that's yours. It says more about you than it does about me. Oh, you guys want to take over from white people and oppress them. You are projecting. What more show of black character in this country do you want than the results that black South Africans have brought about in this beautiful rainbow nation? Which you're refusing to see because you're not capable of it. That's all I can guess. I don't understand how anybody looks at South Africa and doesn't go, wow, that's inspiring. Why can't we be more like that? What is the sense of superiority based on crap? What is so difficult to understand that an African can do better than you? That an African can be someone to learn from? I'm starting to sound like a broken record at this point.
As a nation to say, this group has been disempowered. It's been disempowered. We need to empower it. Ownership of the economy is in far too few hands. Ownership has not spread. That is what the World Bank and IMF said. And that is precisely what happens in other countries. When you go to other countries, you'll find the citizens. I mean, in Africa, it will largely be black people. Wherever you go in the world, it will be the citizens. Now, in our country, it was
I've shown it in a previous video. Not all of us agree on the ways in which some of the stuff's being implemented, but we all agree with the principle. We are committed to an equitable South Africa, whatever you guys want to fail at in your countries. Because here in South Africa, equality is not just a buzzword. Anti-racism is not just a buzzword. Rainbowism is not just a buzzword. It's not just wokeness. It is something we take incredibly seriously. The dignity of the South African people is something close to all of our hearts. That every single person would have their potential released, because you guys ain't seen nothing yet. You don't even know the potential. You see one Tyler and you think that's the only Tyler we have. You see one Trevor Noah and you think that's the only Trevor Noah we have. You see one Charlize Theron, you think that's the only Charlize Theron we have. You see one Zwazibini Tunzi. Charlize Theron's gorgeous. She's not the only gorgeous Afrikaner. Okay? So Zwazibini Tunzi is breathtakingly beautiful. She is not the only breathtakingly beautiful black South African woman. Tyler is eye-poppingly stunning. She ain't the only pretty girl from Joburg. Okay? Eldorado Park has many girls just as talented. And the only people being robbed by South African potential is the rest of the world. So as usual, mind your business and let South Africans mind the South African business. This has been Nuance with Nikki, the nitty gritty, even if it's shitty. Grow up, world.